Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and today we're going to be reviewing and looking at Porter's 5 force models. We're going to be looking at the different elements and sections of Porter's model, and we're going to try and relate this to an example within the sportswear industry. And then finally we would like you to download the Zapper app from Zapworks so that you can use augmented technology to use and conduct additional homework that we would like you to do. So the first thing we are going to do is to define strategy. And why are we defining strategy? Because in 1979 Michael Porter published his paper and he argued how competition forces actually shape strategy. And why does it shape strategy? It shapes strategy because, depending upon the intensity and the competitive nature of an industry and all the different elements, that can affect the profitability of your business. So if we look at a definition of strategy, we can see one definition is a concentrated and coordinated set of activities designed to achieve a goal or objective. And we must bear in mind that in the private sector, you're there to make a profit, and you're there to be in business for the long term. You don't want to be in business for 1 or 2 years or 2 to 5 years. Japanese say that sometimes your long-term goals could be making a profit in the 20th year. So how do you get to that stage in terms of making a profit in the private sector, in terms of achieving your goals and objectives? And to do this, we must really look at Michael Porter's 5 forces, and when he published it in 1979. So Michael Porter identified 5 elements to his 5 force model, and these included the threat of new entrants, the threat of substitute products, the bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers, and a rivalry amongst competitors. And and Michael Porter was trying to say that these 5 factors determine the competitive intensity of an industry, and these factors affect long-term profit potential in an industry and therefore its attractiveness. This model is considered to be an external analysis framework, and it's important to remember that the purpose of this model is to evaluate the root causes of profitability in an industry. Don't want to go into account, but just remember that you have your sales, minus your cost of goods sold, which is your opening stock, minus your closing stock, gives you cost of goods sold. Take your cost of goods sold away from your sales, gives you your gross profit. And the first thing is you want your good industry gross profit, at least higher than the national industry. And then you take away the expenses of your company, which gives you your net profit from your gross profit. So again, we're talking about making your business profitable in the long term, and it is your strategy that you adopt within a given environment that determines how or if you're going to be profitable at all. And what's going to affect that is going to be, as Michael Porter said, these 5 different elements. So the example that we are going to use is going to be the example from the sportswear industry. Porter's 5 force model, and you're using a company or an industry, you really need to go into a lot more detail and depth and provide again in-text referencing and your reference list at the end. So if we're looking at the sportswear market, we know that the market is in steady growth. We know that the sportswear market is in the mature stage, which is still growing. It has in 2020 a turnover of over 180 billion US dollars. What has fueled this kind of like growth and continued growth? It's been globalization, favorable fashion trends, and economic growth. And companies are in a profitable area and generate stable cash flows. So you really need to go into a little more detail in terms of stating what it is and what's actually happening in your industry sector that you're reviewing. So now we are going to look at the rivalry amongst existing competitors first, and again we're going to relate this to the sportswear market. So with the competitors in a given market, a number of factors can determine how concentrated this is. So if the top four players owns over 80% of the total market, then you can say that the you know industry is highly concentrated. So, but in this case, it's not the case, because if we look at the top four players in the sportswear market, well, then this really only accounts for 38% of the total market size, with Nike and Adidas taking 21.1% and 12.4% respectively, followed by Asus and Under Armour, which has a market share of 2.7 and 2.6 respectively. Again, I'm giving you details of the market players and their market size, which you need to do as well. But this only amounts up to 38% of the total industry. So therefore, the industry is fragmented, and if the market and the pressure on a few global giants means other companies can compete at a local or regional level. You know, so and as with any mature market, brand names and advertising play a key role. So we know that there's not really too much of a price war between the two top players of Nike and Adidas, because they have differentiated their products, and their products are actually sold at a premium compared to other goods which are sold at a local, regional, local price. So again, the top two players, Nike and Adidas, are not really going to face too much rivalry with new players coming in. However, if you are not within the top four and you're competing locally, and you're competing not on differentiation or quality but on price, then you could face heavy competition, with increased competition coming into your area. So and if we look at this, really, then the driving force in this market at this stage in the mature market is really market recognition, and it's how much money your company employs and puts into achieving differentiation, brand recognition, and market recognition on a global side. About the threat of new entrants, new competitors coming into the market within the sportswear industry. Well, the threat is relatively low. A new competitor is not really likely to intimidate the top market leaders, Nike and Adidas, because Nike, Adidas, Asiza, Under Armour have spent billions over the years in developing their global brand and have established themselves, and thus competitors, if they want to compete with the top four, they would really need to invest the same amount to establish themselves, which is going to be difficult to do. Also, new companies will need to invest in human capital and teams and designer teams and production personnel and other employees who have the know-how and information necessary in order to make your company successful in this marketplace. So therefore the barrier for entry is high, but smaller companies can compete on a local or regional scale. So if a competitor really wanted to come into this marketplace and to enter the global market, then they could come in terms of targeting a specific target market and going in for a niche market, and therefore they would need to invest a lot less than they would do if they were targeting the whole market. So that would be a better route for them. So it's not insurmountable that a company couldn't do it, but they would need to be extremely strategic, taking into consideration what already exists in this marketplace. We look at the next element of Porter, which is the threat of substitutes. One could argue yes and no to this, but in my opinion, I think it's really no, because what is the need and what is the reason why people use casual wear? Well, there's casual sportswear attire, kind of like it is tailored to customers' needs and tastes and styles. Sportswear and wearing casual sportswear is trendy, and people like wearing these. They might have sportswear in relation to their football teams or their teams, sportswear in relation to a variety, all sorts of different elements which kind of like reflect what they like, who they support. So, what are the real substitutes for these products? The substitutes could be other clothing, other casual wear, items which could be called substitutes for sportswear clothing. But for now, this is not really significant pressure coming through to say that substitute products are high, but rather low, because of the underlying consumers' needs. Unless the underlying consumers' needs changes for trendy, fashionable sportswear linked to their teams or linked to a specific area of their own interest, then it's not foreseeable at the moment, but we don't know about consumers' changing needs for the future. Look at the next element, the bargaining power of suppliers in Porter's model. Well, if we relate it to the sportswear again, we can see that the raw materials include cotton, other types of fabrics, synthetic materials, rubber. So the larger companies like Nike and Adidas can obtain cheaper prices from suppliers, and there are a lot of suppliers because they buy in huger quantities and huger bulk, so they can actually get economies of scale because they are selling on a global perspective, so they can get economies of scale and get cheaper prices, and therefore they can actually increase their profit margins. Because if you remember at the beginning, I talked about your sales. And then you have your opening stock minus your closing stock gives you your cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold minus your sales gives you your gross profit. Now, if you take away, your opening stock minus your closing stock, and your opening stock is a lot cheaper than your competitors because you can buy in a larger quantity, then that means you actually make more gross profit because your cost of goods in comparison to other companies are going to be lower because of your size of your orders, which are going to be far superior than other companies. So again, that's going to give you a greater gross profit margin. Now, with your gross profit, you can decide to do whatever you want to do with that. You can decide to now spend more money on product development or spend more money on advertising to build the brand, the differentiation and the uniqueness of your product. So from that perspective, it again makes your product more unique and differentiated and allows you to command a higher price as you have differentiated your product. So even if we look at the smaller companies have a harder time to source raw materials because they will have to pay a higher price in comparison to other companies. One way to circumvent this is to look for alternative fabrics. So this leads other smaller companies to be more innovative and more creative in their product development. But if we look at the number of suppliers within this industry, then we can see there are a large number of suppliers. And because there are a large number of suppliers, that means there's not too much pressure for other companies operating in this industry, which means that your cost of goods sold are going to ideally be lower because there are a larger number of suppliers. At the the last element, the bargaining power of buyers. Well, millions of customers in the sportswear market know they have plenty of choice, but companies like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour have spent billions of pounds to differentiate themselves, creating products with a high quality, and they've invested highly in brand recognition. And companies understand the link between sports fans and sports stars. Recently, Nike signed a $500 million lifetime contract with LeBron James, one of its most famous testimonials, by creating branded products. So therefore, they've differentiated their brands and they've related to outstanding sports achievements of their testimonials. So again, what is being achieved here by the top 4 players are value and brand recognition. So which command a higher price. So for the top 4 players, we would say that there's not too much, the bargaining power is not too high. It's low because people are buying a higher premium price, a quality product. They're buying value, they're buying quality, they're buying differentiation, they're buying brand recognition. But it's not to say that for the regional markets, where you've got smaller competitors who may compete on brand, then the bargaining power buyers will be high, because then if they're just buying on price as opposed to quality or brand name, then they can choose, one brand against another dependent upon price. So if we summarize, we can see that Porter's 5 Forces, which again was published by Michael Porter in 1979, was really about trying to determine how competitive and how intense the competition was within a market or industry sector. So to see what strategy that you should adopt in terms of your company, depending upon the situation, depending upon which stage you're coming in, and also linked to your profit margins, your gross profit and your net profit, and what you should be doing where in order to be profitable in that business. So it's important to understand the purpose of Porter's 5 Forces. We looked at the different elements in terms of the competitive rivalry related to the sportswear market. We looked at the bargaining power of suppliers, the bargaining power of buyers. We looked at the threat of new entrants and substitute products. And really, you need to go into more detail in terms of your company or your industry that you're reviewing. You can't just be superficial in terms of what you're doing. You need to go into more depth and detail in terms of what you're discussing. So again, when you're going into it, talk about the market share. If you're looking at the competitive rivalry, say who the main players are. In the case of the sportswear market, you've got Adidas, Nike, Under Armour, and so on and so forth. And what market share do they have? And does it achieve 80%? And so on and so forth. Do they have product differentiation and brand recognition? Do they spend loads of money in marketing? So you need to come up with some more details, facts and figures, rather than making it superficial. In addition to this, you must make sure that when you do your research, you produce in-text referencing, and you also, at the end, again, provide a reference list in terms of the points that you've researched. You must go into more research in this. And then finally, the other thing that you need to do is to make sure that you link this to the rest of your report or your work. You can't just look at Porter as one part of the external environment in terms of the situation analysis without linking it forward in terms of your marketing strategy or your use of your marketing mix or so on and so forth, depending upon what the question is in your work. So hope that today has helped for Mr. What we require you to do is to download the Zapper app on your mobile, ideally, or on your tablet. And all you do is just go down to Google and you type in download Zapper, Z-A-P-P-A-R, Zapper app. And then Google will come up with this little red box with the yellow lightning flash in the middle and black outer. And it will come up with this Zapper app here, and you can just click on install, and then it will install it on your device if it's on your mobile. And then once you've installed this on your mobile, all you need to do is then open it and then scan it over the barcode, and this will lead you to additional homework that we would like you to complete. Many thanks today, again from Mr. Tan.